Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the famous Birdland Jazz Club here in New York City. Last fall, the Strata-East All Stars performed to many, many jazz fans here for the entire week, and it celebrated the 50th anniversary of the iconic jazz label, which was founded by pianist Stanley Cowell and trumpeter Charles Tolliver. And this record label was founded in 1971 by the late pianist Stanley Cowell and trumpeter Charles Tolliver. Now, during the 70s, these guys put out some very important jazz recordings, and the mission of Strata-East Records was, one, to be an independent label, not affiliated with the majors, but also have independent economic ownership of the masters, which Charles and Stanley gave to the artists who recorded it on the label. Now, throughout the early 70s to the mid-80s, Strata-East put out some very prolific albums by artists ranging from the great Heath Brothers to Pharoah Sanders, Cecil McBee, as well as the great Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson. Tonight here on the Pace Report, you're going to see highlights of the Strata-East All Stars, featuring Charles Tolliver on trumpet, as well as the great Cecil McBee and Buster Williams on bass, Lenny White on drums, Billy Harper on tenor saxophone, and the great George Cables on piano. Also, Danny Glover was the MC for one of the evenings here for the Strata-East All Stars. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of my interview, as well as performances of the 50th anniversary of Strata-East Records, here on the Pace Report, reporting live from Birdland, here in New York City.
This evening, what else I gotta do? I'm doing great. I'm doing better now. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. So I have to, we'll celebrate this moment by really bringing on this extraordinary collection group of artists here. And I'm gonna begin with Lenny White, who's on drums. And next on Buster Williams on bass. And then I have George Cables on piano. Billy Harper on sax and trumpet. The one and only Charles Tolliver on trumpet. Gonna rock here. This is progressive. You know, straight ahead jazz, the real deal. So you just tie yourself to your seat there, and don't break any wind, okay? All right, here we go. Thank you.
moving forward with Strata-East, what did Max Roach, your mentor, tell you and Stanley about starting this venture? Because this next decade, the 70s, you guys were very instrumental in allowing a lot of voices to be heard that would never have been heard by a major record company like a Verve or an Atlantic. You guys were going against the grain at the time.
Right. One of the things that was clear to me in dealing with those steps which get a product to the marketplace is that the operation which controlled the paper, jackets, they were the whole ball game, because you can get a great recording, but if you don't have that selling part of a nice cover, jacket, liner notes, etc., photography, everything that goes into the display of the packaging that's housing this recording, business-wise, that can become an albatross. And so it was very informative, and I needed to understand how that worked, and that was very helpful as we moved along, understanding the players in the record industry in terms of the production of the product. The companies who were the major players.
Now, what's very, very beautiful about the artwork in your logo? I love how it says, "In all beginnings, a mystical, magical force, what course, what destiny, determined in time." The pyramid. I mean, you go African, you go Afrocentric with this, which, again, this is another time when people of color were really kind of going and investigating their roots at the time. That Pan-Africanism, that was beautiful at that time. Did you deliberately put that in the mind state of when you were recording these albums and bringing artists to the foray of the label at the time?
Well, not necessarily Stanley and I, but certainly some of the other artists who we took on their product and put it in the Strata-East catalog. And it's sort of like mushroomed, one ping pong or the other. Maybe one artist saw that and decided they wanted to make a statement on it. And so just by happenstance, they developed this sort of mystical theme that permeated most of the releases.
Saxophonist Clifford Jordan was very instrumental in helping you to put out the first set of releases. And I understand it was through him. He was kind of going through the same thing that you and Stanley were going through, but the record venture or the production venture that he was trying to be involved with didn't come into fruition. So he had this finished product that he introduced and gave to you guys. Is there some validity to that?
Yeah, Clifford Jordan was extremely important in the development of the Strata-East record label. He had already created his own series of recordings, both himself and other musicians, Charles Saunders, Cecil Payne, with really some cornerstone musicians on those recordings. And when he saw what we were doing, Stanley and I, with the Strata-East project, he simply came and said, hey, I've already done what you have done, but you've taken it the next step, so here you go. And absolutely it helped further jumpstart the early beginnings of the label. The job was just fantastic. And one of our great soloists. He was a visionary. He had already seen what we finally came to the decision, to do ourselves. And it was very important.
What were some of the early recordings that he brought to you guys starting when you started Strata-East? Who were the artists? The
well,
bands?
I mean, he had his first recording, which was called "In the World,"
Right.
and I think he had Lenny Kelly, Kenny Dorham. And he had Cecil McBee, some of the same individuals, and a wonderful example of what was considered free jazz at that time. Charles McBee, who actually was the husband of Joanne McBee, and he had a real good handle on what was going on with that. Clifford made a recording of him, and Pharoah Sanders, with Leon Thomas. Later, Glass Bead Games. Before he eventually was to pass away so beautifully. So, it was very important.
how did you guys handle the business side of running a label? I mean, and also too, having a label, you had to have an office. So I'm assuming that you had a secretary, you had somebody to handle the money, you had somebody to take care of the promotions as far as radio. You had to orchestrate a machine to run this label to make sure that the product got out to the certain people.
Well, first of all, no artist who we put product out was under an artist contract with the label. And that was an eye-opener for some. How could you have a label going if you don't have artists on the contract? Well, we started with the first recording, and then Cooper Jordan wanted to throw in. We decided that any artist who we agreed to let the product become a part of the catalog, that it would not be putting them under an artist contract. Only the product, an agreement was fashioned for that, which meant that they were at liberty to be on the contract anywhere they wanted to. We were only going to do something with them for the particular product that they brought to us, and we said, okay, we'll put that out. And so, because if an artist has created their own product through their own financial effort, then they should be the major recipient of whatever came back from it, and therefore the agreement was fashioned in that manner. And there was those who would say, well, you can't run an operation like that if you're not making more, if you're making less than 50% at least, from whatever it is. And of course, we were at, a minuscule percentage, because I wanted the artists to have a major portion of whatever came back. And so that was basically the business side of things. And we amassed some 60 plus product through that process. It's basically condominium style process in today's real estate situation, where the unit is owned by a person inside of an overall condominium management situation. Sort of like intellectual property ownership inside of an intellectual property. And it can only work if there's an understanding of that from jump.
Did you get that? Did you and Stanley understand that from jump? Because
yes,
because you guys are music. You guys are composers. You guys are performers. But one hand kind of has to watch the other hand, and I noticed you guys had your hands full.
No, Stanley and I were like twins, not biologically. Or else our brains function in the same manner. Therefore, this was easy stuff to deal with. The main thing was that artists were free to do whatever they wanted to. They weren't locked down into this situation. And the freedom of that was one of the most important things. And it allowed me to fashion the label without having to worry about, well, how many more products do I have? One has to get out of this artist, to satisfy a contract. And besides, they were a major recipient of every record that was sold. Now it's hard for business people to realize how is that to make a profit. It wasn't created to make a profit. It was, if we were going to go down this route, it was so that the product itself could get to the marketplace. We found a way to get it to the marketplace through mom and pop's distributorship. And once that was established, it was about getting it to the marketplace. It became the only thing for me, and whatever came off of it, fine. As far as promotion, the artists themselves were the promotion. So they didn't need to have to pay 5 figures to a promo team, like a big operation.
Right.
Because if the artist was playing somewhere, he would always have his or her product to sell. And of course, we'd make sure that the mom and pops in a particular area would have it. So the best promotion for the artist is the artist himself. So it functioned, that's the way it functioned.
met Charles Tolliver when I began performing with my first group upon arrival in New York. What was that? Late '64, when I began to perform with Jackie McLean. And Charles and I, over a brief amount of time, became instantly very good friends to this day. Stanley Cowell came around a little later. I guess Charles introduced him to me in preparation to perform at the Slug Saloon in those days. And, it was a casual acquaintance until I heard him play, and then I realized that, there was something special between Charles, him, and even myself and Jimmy Hopps. So that was, what's that?
I'm Chris, how are you?
That was around late 66, 67, something like that.
Do you?
Cecil, your career as a solo artist started through Strata-East Records, and your first debut record came out through Strata-East Records.
Yes.
Tell me how Charles and Stanley came to you with the idea of you becoming a leader and leading in your own right.
Well, it was a brief encounter, if you will. We were all buddies, and we had performed together over a brief period of time to the applause of what we were doing by general audiences, et cetera, et cetera. And Stanley as quiet as he was as person and as more concentrated in his manner. But when he played the piano, then you realized that there was something special. And that I found personally very, very appropriate for what we were now doing. Charles and I, our friendship had brought about that possibility of, the cooperation of somebody of that level of thought, including Jimmy Hopps. So, although Charles and I were like hangout buddies, Stanley and Jimmy were like folks that, brought about other flavors of our thoughts musically and creatively. And so it turned out to be a union that to this day I'm very proud of. Because I hadn't, Charles called me for this performance here. I hadn't heard that music in a while. And indeed, it's very special. And we were just hanging out, having a good time, playing music and of Charles' concept and Stanley. It was amazing. I feel at this particular point in my career, I was very blessed and very, again, very blessed to have been a part of it.
structure of Strata-East, Charles and Stanley stressed that the content is yours, meaning that you own the masters. And this was not popular. This is really going against the grain of how most record labels were run and still are run. How do you feel about the legacy of Strata-East 50 years later, the impact that these two men left as entrepreneurs, but also the art of this music moving forward?
Well, Mutima, my album that was sort of produced by Strata-East, was a big happening for me because upon having first arrived in New York City, I saw myself and still see myself as composer. And Strata-East, given who it was and what its purposes were, provided me an opportunity to speak for myself on the paper, past my bass. And so to this day, I'm very, very happy that I was able to have that opportunity because, quite frankly, the recording is an effect of various compositional thought processes that I had experienced over time during that period that are now recorded. And it really gives me a smile to listen to these things that I've done at this particular point because it's pretty good.
Yeah, I could say that this, what I just was talking about was not lost on Prince. Because who's the biggest promo of anything? There's no promotional team that could top Prince's own promo of himself.
But here's the thing that Prince did, and to piggyback what you're saying, Prince's problem wasn't that. Prince's problem was with the contract and the numbers. And he knew, and he had legal acumen to come in and say, no. My price points are much bigger because I'm doing high profile projects. And he flipped the game. He flipped the game where, okay, you own Prince, you own the name, but I'm gonna go and put my own stuff out until you come correct with my brand. And that's basically what you guys did.
Right, but he was paying attention to Gil Scott-Heron.
He sure was.
And he knew that, because he figured out, oh, that's his product. That's not any record company. See, people think, well, oh yeah, you had Gil Scott-Heron's Prince in America. Yeah, but that was Gil Scott-Heron's product. I just controlled this distribution. Strata-East just controlled this distribution.
Right.
Ultimately, it's his product. He owns it.
Does he still own Winter? Does the estate still own Winter in America?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he died. When he died, anything that wasn't owned
By
on paper, signed that they produced that product for him and that they own it. They own the copyright on it. Yet, the thing about Strata-East is, and very few have the acumen to understand that, when you bring a product out and you put C in the circle on it, copyright, that copyrights that product for life. If you put the P with the circle on it, that copyrights the music on that product, on this particular product, for life. Doesn't matter if that's sold somewhere else. They inherit it, but unless the people who own that copyright sell the whole thing, they just allow them to do it under another C in the circle. So you see where, for instance, when a product of mine was recorded with Allen bass, and he brought it over to Arista. You see the C in the circle for Arista. They're copywriting this new edition of it, which means that in the United States they own the whole rights, only for the United States. But that P in the circle still remains with Allen bass because that's his recording. He never gave that up. Why? Because the money that would be asked for would be more than someone like Clive Davis would give for it. He'll give the advance for that C in the circle to have the right to say that, you know, this was released under the auspices of or commission of. In the case of Gil Scott-Heron, that every song on there is his. Right. So that means that the publishing, which is that Purposeful Publishing, controls the whole ball game.
That's right.
Controls the whole ball game. Now, the recording that was issued on Strata-East, that P in the circle, that remains with Strata-East for life. So, but in the case of Gil Scott-Heron, he came to me, man, you know, and he was, you know, I knew he was in trouble. He never said to me, "Hey, man, you know, can I have a?" You know, it was almost like he was afraid to talk to me, but because he knew that he had won with this record. He had won because he was getting 85 cents on the dollar. 85 cents on the dollar for a gold record.
That's a lot of money back.
As it made, he was able to have this property and shit that he had in Richmond. And so he came. I knew he was in trouble. This was years later. I said, "Hey, man, here. You go ahead and do what you did." So he let TVT
Right.
put it out. Now, I don't know how much money they gave him.
Now wait a minute now. TVT put it out, but also they put out a lot of the back Arista stuff that Gil Scott-Heron did.
Yeah, they just went to Clive Davis and said, "Can we, you know, how much you want for this?" You know. And it was a consortium of people with that TV. I don't know if they're still in business.
I don't think so.
No, they're out of business. They were shy streets anyway. And so they put that together. So I said, okay, just so I don't have to deal with no paperwork and no, because you have to hire a lawyer to really go through the fine details. And I said, no, I'm not going there. Go ahead and do what you need to do. You know? Because you made plenty of money off this thing. Maybe you can make some more.
But see, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Charles. He had enormous success with Bob Thiel in the Flying Dutchman records. He was
shooting it up.
Right. And he came to you as an out. He knew that what you guys were doing, Bob Thiel was not going to be able to do. And as an out, that became one of your highest selling, and still is to this very day,
right,
one of your highest selling recordings on Strata-East.
Right, because it was for the hood. Jazz is, per se, straight ahead jazz is not necessary for the hood. Only a small portion of the hood people, man, are into straight ahead jazz. What he's doing, what his thing was an overall with words.
Right.
And so that was a no-brainer that was going to, it was going to take off, man. It was perfectly made for the hood. And business-wise, I became very astute with how the copyright business is handled, because you have to be on the right side of the copyright law, when you're dealing with these things. And I made sure that the guys understood, man, that you own that product, and you can go and do anything you want with it.
Right.
And the thing that was with us, I either can stay with it or don't stay with it. And most of them, I when it became time, and a lot of guys they gave up. They didn't want to put the effort in to get out there and get the gigs to promote their own product. The records would sit there and say, come in the office and get whatever you need, you know. It's yours, you ordered it, you paying for it, you know. Take it on your gigs, sell it, you know. And so a lot of them, the ones that are no longer available, they just gave up on it, you know. A lot of them came into New York just to try and do that, and you know, they weren't part of the name system of building, you know, a career for themselves, you know, here. So, you know, things that didn't take off, so they just left it on. And I guess it's sitting in there wherever they are, if they're still alive, you know, to say, well, at least I did that, and it was on Strata-East. You know.
This is just a tiny bit of the back catalog. I mean, Charlie Rouse, Clifford Jordan, the Heath Brothers, Billy Harper, Larry Ridley. You're responsible for, in fact, we'll see this tonight, the performance. Cecil McBee, who's part of the All Stars tonight, his first recording was on Strata-East. You gave everybody an opportunity to have a voice. I mean, you got Pharoah Sanders, you have John Hicks, you have M. Boom, you have the late Sonny Fortune. I mean,
Right.
you guys were just,
Right.
and you were cranking it out too. It wasn't like you would just do one a month. You guys were cranking out multiple recordings during these years. How did that keep going? Especially like when everything was starting to get in full swing, like around 74, 75, 76. That was when you guys were really kind of going in motion.
Well, I had just set up a little system in this little tiny little office that we had. Had a wonderful guy named Charles Mingus, just a sweetheart. And he looked after the stock. And there were one or two for a couple hours a day. Secretarial things would come in and answer the phone, you know. And I had it set up so that it basically ran itself. Literally ran itself. And I mean, of course, I was 24/7 looking over it, but it, you know, logistically, it pretty much ran itself. And
was it stressful to do that and then be a leader? You know, playing dates, going and touring also like that?
No, because again, I set it up so that it could run itself, you know, so that I could concentrate on being an artist. You know, I was never going to give that up, so I had to find a way to fashion it so that operation ran itself. And miraculously, you know, it did.
I did a little research, and you have to help my viewers and me understand the end of Strata-East. And now, one of the accounts was that Stanley had gotten an offer from another record label, and he was also a leader. He was doing a whole bunch of other things. Was there some validity to that?
No.
Okay. What happened?
What do you mean what happened?
What led to the end of Strata-East?
Well, in fact, Strata-East never ended. It just went. I kept it quiet after 1980 because I decided I didn't want to have to deal with it, you know, a little office space, and you know, my mindset was just totally about concentrating on other musical things which I was dealing with, you know. And so, you know, I shut the office down, but I didn't shut the operation down. The operation continued on because I had already set it up to run itself. It's hard to explain to people, man, you know, about Strata-East because they don't see any activity, but the industry's activity. You know, between 1980 and now, the records are selling all the time. Well, the ones that I decided to keep, about 30 of the 60 has always been out there.
Now I need to ask you this. The back catalog.
Right.
We're now in the streaming era, and there are a lot of people that want to hear the Heath Brothers record. A lot of people want to hear that Shirley Scott recording.
Well, Shirley Scott, I gave that back to the people who were handling for her, and they've already gotten that issued in the UK. So that's out.
Okay.
So I mean, I didn't care. All of them could have gone back except Stanley and our records. I've been happy with that. Why? Because that was the original intent. You know, was to just do our thing. All the rest came in to join in to do, you know, what we were doing, and I was glad to help. But they didn't have to. We were still going to. Once we started, we were going to still do that. And this about Stanley even go off and make a record, I was like, this is nonsense.
So
sure, he was. If somebody came to him like Steeple Chase, like Inja, like when we the ones who helped Inja get started.
Right. I remember
Where was the first recording, and they wanted to then take our product and put it in theirs. I said no, so they got mad. I said, well, no, The Strata-East will never become part of Engine Records.
Of course not.
And so they got upset with, and so it was like, okay, they still owe me for that Engine. I ain't say nothing. Okay, man. It's okay. But Stanley made records for Steeplechase, a lot of them.
Right.
Why not? Get the money from, whoever.
And the beautiful thing, and it goes back to what we said earlier, the fact that the artist was able to take their own content, their own music, and do whatever they want to do with it. I mean, at the end of the day, your legacy is set in stone because of that. If anything, they talk about Strata-East, they could talk about Gil, they could talk about Music Inc., they could talk about Stanley's work. At the end of the day, your legacy, both your legacy is involved with making sure that the artist had tangible. And that's something that's missing right now.
Because of the business side of things, people who would or could use this kind of concept, they want to make money from it. Let's face it, if you, business side is okay, money was of no concern. Absolutely no concern with me with this project. At 15%, you couldn't even have an office.
That's and when you say that, I'm still in my mind 71, 72, 1971, 70. That's absurd. No one in even the majors would never do that.
Well, of course not. It's the reverse.
Right.
Actually, it's 97.3.
Right.
It got to be 90-10 somewhere, but basically it was 97.3, 93.6 or 7 for 50, 60, 70 years. The rock groups started finally,
Yeah, the 70s.
And of course Miles Davis had a record-breaking contract, for straight ahead jazz, when he started with Columbia. But it wasn't, it was maybe 80-20 or 85, yeah, 80-20, 85-15. Columbia, Miles Davis.
What do you recommend the younger generation now do as far as setting up the same kind of business platform that you have for Strata-East? Is it more viable now to run a label now? Because let's keep it 100. The majors are kind of losing their steam right now. A lot of musicians now are taking the bull by the horn by themselves.
I would venture to say that the counter concept of Strata-East could not be done by anybody. Because in a way it's a selflessness, but I just don't see, because an artist, if he's going to invest in himself, he has to put all of his effort into that, not also looking after others at the same time. It just came in one point in history when I saw a way to fashion how such a project could run itself without interfering with the artists who helped to create it, interfering with what they wanted to do with their own career. And I just don't see that kind of thing. It's a kind of dedication that almost is not necessary today, in a sense, because with the age of the digital age, an artist can basically put all of the things together that took teams of people to put together for in the LP era, and issue that product and online, as it has already been demonstrated by Taylor Swift, you know, as an example, and never have to worry about, you know, a record operation. They are the whole thing. And of course, jazz music is a whole nother animal, you know, and many factions working at its foundation all the time, you know, to call it something else, create something else out of it. And the heart of the Strata-East catalog is that more or less quintessential model.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report. Reporting live here at the famous Birdland Jazz Club here in New York City. I'd like to personally congratulate and thank the talented Stanley Cowell, also the great Charles Tolliver, for their contributions to Black American music with Strata-East Records. You guys have really left a very important impact on Black American music and the artists that you nurtured, as well as gave an opportunity to lend their voice to the arts. I'd like to personally thank the All Stars that performed, the great Buster Williams, Cecil McBee, Lenny White, Billy Harper, and George Cables, as well as I'd like to give a mad shout out to Mr. Danny Glover. Also, Scott Thompson, thank you for arranging my time with Mr. Tolliver for this entire week. And I want to thank the staff and management here at Birdland for their warm hospitality. As always, people, please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, and leave comments, as well as follow me on social media by way of Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.